It's a pleasure to be here at the committee. I wanted to thank the committee very much for the invitation to come to present to you today and to answer your questions. One of the reasons why I felt it was particularly valuable to take you up on this invitation is I believe we have a very serious issue, and we are in need of concerted federal effort and assistance in dealing with it. And I really wanted to bring that message to the committee personally. And I'd like to share with you a few remarks and a bit of a narrative about my experience as becoming a new minister in British Columbia. I was sworn in July as Attorney General with responsibility for gambling. And that was really when my eyes were opened about some of the activities that have been taking place in British Columbia. So it was on one of my first days as Minister responsible for gambling when I was briefed by our provincial regulator as part of the briefings I received as a new minister responsible. And the first words that I heard at that briefing from a member of our regulator, the Gaming Policy Enforcement Branch, the first words were, quote, "I think we are going to blow your mind," unquote. And Mr. Chair, I can advise my mind was indeed blown. The regulator walked me through extensive and overwhelming evidence of large-scale money laundering in British Columbia Lower Mainland casinos. I was shown video and photographs of individuals wheeling large suitcases packed with $20 bills, others bringing stacks of cash to casino cages. I was astounded by the audacity of those involved. On a purely practical matter, $800,000 in 20s is very heavy. It looked like they were helping somebody move a box of books. But I was equally astounded that this activity had been taking place in British Columbia without an effective criminal, legal, regulatory, or policy response for almost a decade. There have been, to my knowledge, no related criminal charges or tax prosecutions to date related to the activity that I witnessed. Suspicious cash transactions began climbing at BC casinos in 2009, following the defunding of BC's provincial integrated casino policing team. Large suspicious cash transactions continued unabated from 2009 until late 2017, when our new government instructed BC casinos that they should no longer accept large cash transactions where they didn't know where the cash was coming from. And we're still not done yet in terms of solving this problem. I retained anti-money laundering expert Dr. Peter German, a former senior RCMP officer, the author of Canada's leading textbook on anti-money laundering law, who has been investigating and reviewing what has happened in British Columbia and will advise me in a report that I will receive at the end of this month about how the province, at the provincial level, can address this problem. At the federal level, I would really like for this committee to understand the colossal nature of the regulatory failure that took place and frankly may still be taking place in British Columbia. The issue in British Columbia is so notorious and so severe that I was briefed on an international intelligence community training session in which international intelligence members were taught about something called the Vancouver model of money laundering. We are famous internationally, or more accurately, we become infamous for money laundering. In the Vancouver model of money laundering, a wealthy individual from China, a country with strict currency export controls, wants to gamble. A gangster will meet that gambler at a casino, offering cash in amounts as high as hundreds of thousands of dollars. In one transaction, $1.2 million in cash. The cash is the proceeds of gang crime. To pay for the cash, the gambler agrees to transfer money in China from his bank account into a bank account under the control of the gang. The gambler walks the illicit cash into the casino, completes a FinTrack reporting form, buys chips, gambles, and on leaving either cashes out, receiving a check, or carries the chips out of the casino. In sum, the criminal gang has successfully laundered difficult-to-manage $20 bills, moving the money out of Canada while keeping their names off of FinTrack forms. Those involved in the transaction can truthfully report that everyone is following all of the reporting rules. FinTrack will aggressively audit and confirm that the reports have been made accurately. The only real evidence of a problem is a guy lugging a hockey bag full of $20 bills into the casino. And you might think that that alone would be enough to start a police investigation or a Revenue Canada investigation. It has not been. BC's casino policing team was funded again and resurrected with a better mandate in 2016 and is now unsurprisingly but thankfully involved in a massive transnational criminal investigation. Now, I'd like to thank those who work at FinTrack. I believe they collect critically important information and ensure it is accurate. The issue is not their fault, but there is a problem. An anti-money laundering system that rigorously enforces compliance with reporting but does not have an enforcement arm puts a sheep mask on a wolf's face. While I know it is not true, I picture submitted FinTrack forms being picked up by a lonely person at a fax machine in a giant warehouse, putting the reports into boxes, and the warehouse is filled with boxes from floor to ceiling as far as the eye can see. Although this is clearly not the actual situation, it may as well be true given the apparent lack of action in British Columbia for casino money launderers. Unfortunately, the impact of FinTrack reporting in BC has been that any criticism of allowing massive cash transactions with money from unknown sources could be answered simply, quote, "We comply with all federal anti-money laundering reporting rules," unquote. I have no confidence that any enforcement or investigation action would result from a report submitted this afternoon with the words "highly suspicious" in all caps and triple underlined. In fact, I believe the current reporting system actually reduces the possibility of action because the individual completing the form would mistakenly believe that writing "highly suspicious" on the form and then submitting it was the same as reporting it to police. It is not the same. Unfortunately, if FinTrack has been concerned about a lack of action on their reports, they have been unable or unwilling to speak publicly about that lack of action. That needs to change. British Columbians take no comfort in the suggestion that this is somehow limited to casinos. We will be asking Dr. German to take on a second phase, this time looking into real estate, following highly publicized reports of a link between money laundering and our real estate market in British Columbia. Now, Dr. German has requested that I provide you with his interim federally focused recommendations given the timing of your committee and the timing of his report. It's a little bit like getting the last page of the book without receiving the book itself. I do have the recommendations for the committee here for you today, Mr. Chair, but unfortunately I didn't receive them in time for them to be translated for the committee. So I'm in your hands about the best way to ensure the committee receives them. Important work with the federal government is happening behind the scenes, and I'm grateful for that support of the federal government. I'm appearing here so that all members of federal parliament, and as best as possible, all Canadians, can understand why we are asking for more support from Revenue Canada, the RCMP, and other federal agencies. We certainly hope for the federal parliament supports for any interventions that are proposed by the government. Thank you, Mr. Chair.